welcome to the Banyan Books podcast. I'm your host, Ross McKeechee. Delighted to be joined today by Katherine Woodward Thomas. Before we get to her formal introduction, our Banyan announcements. Even though we have people joining us from all over the world online today, the physical location of Banyan Books and Sound in Kitsilano in Vancouver, BC, is on the traditional and unceded territories of the Coast Salish peoples, including the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. Banyan Books is in its 50th anniversary year this year, so everybody please support your local and independent bookstores. Every time you make a purchase from Banyan Books, you help to support all kinds of wonderful programming like this evening's event. And of course, be sure to follow this podcast. Look for all the recordings of these live shows. You can search Banyan Books in Conversation on YouTube and subscribe, or you can search Banyan Books in Conversation on any podcasting platform. Okay, our guest this evening. Katherine Woodward Thomas is a licensed marriage and family therapist and teacher to thousands from all corners of the world in her virtual and in-person learning communities. She is the New York Times best-selling author of Conscious Uncoupling, 5 Steps to Living Happily Even After, which was nominated for a Books for a Better Life award. She is also the author of the national bestseller, Calling in the One, 7 Weeks to Attract the Love of Your Life. Her Conscious Uncoupling program inspired the honorable breakup of actress Gwyneth Paltrow and musician Chris Martin of Coldplay, and has changed the face of breakups and divorce today. She also created the Calling in the One 49 Days to Love online course. These popular online programs have attracted many to become certified coaches of her work. And to date, Katherine has trained and credentialed hundreds of people as certified Conscious Uncoupling coaches and as certified Calling in the One coaches. Katherine's life-affirming and transformative teachings have been featured in such media outlets as The Today Show, Time Magazine, The Wall Street Journal, The Guardian, People Magazine, and Women's Health, along with many other media outlets throughout the world. Our inspiring guest is also a Billboard charting jazz singer who claimed the #1 jazz artist spot on iTunes for her album titled Lucky in Love. To learn more about Katherine and all of her work, please visit her website, katherinewoodwardthomas.com. Today, Katherine is in conversation with us about her newly released, revised and expanded edition of Calling in the One, 7 Weeks to Attract the Love of Your Life. Jack Canfield says this of the book: Katherine Woodward Thomas elegantly explains the cause of so much of our relational pain. She clearly shares how we can move beyond false beliefs formed in response to our early wounds and helps us to become who we're meant to be. I absolutely love her. Debbie Ford says, for those prepared to call a great love into their lives, this wise guide's the one to read. Here's what I'd like everybody to know about this book. It's not just a book that you sit down and read before bed, although it is good for that as well. It's a transformational toolkit. In its fullest application, Calling in the One is a 49-day course that will help you to shift yourself mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually towards becoming the person you need to be in order to love and be loved by your ideal partner. Everyone in the Banyan community, please join me in welcoming Katherine Woodward Thomas. Katherine, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Ross. It's a delight to be here. Thank you.
You've been on quite a journey with this Calling in the One work. You published this book in 2004. Now, can you fill us in on a little bit of the story on what's transpired between 2004 and now, and what went into this new revised and expanded edition?
Great question. I wrote the book in 2004, really as kind of a way to map out what I had just done in my own life to create an amazing breakthrough. I was a person, even though I'm a licensed psychotherapist, most therapists are therapists because we're struggling and we're healing ourselves and we're working on ourselves. And then all of a sudden you're a therapist, is kind of how that works sometimes.
Yeah.
But I had really painful relationship patterns, and my particular pattern was unavailable people. So it was always like some kind of triangulation or an impossible love. And always there was just a deep sense of passion and longing, and somehow we couldn't really connect. And I kind of was in that I was swimming in that pool for like a lot of decades, a long time, any size, shape, form, color, affiliation, anything. Everything externally might be different, but that through line of no one's really there for me was the chronic experience that I had. And it was quite painful. And as I said, I'd been trying to figure myself out for a long time. And it wasn't until around the year 1999, maybe 5 years before the book actually came out, that I started to really get the metaphysical principles of setting an intention and actually living from that future backwards. So leaning into that future, visioning that future, trying it on like it's now, but asking the universe really based on Michael Beckwith's visioning process. I was at Michael's church for about 10 years. A dear friend of mine, I love him deeply. But he has this wonderful visioning process where you're trying on that future and you're asking the universe, what would I need to give up? What would I need to embrace? And what's my next step? So that's kind of the practice that, maybe you sit there for 10 minutes in the vision and then you ask the universe that, but you've got to listen to the answer and just go with your gut. I mean, most of us don't get burning bushes, with the answer, but we do kind of say, wow, there's something that just popped up for me. My closet is a mess. I'm hoarding old papers in there from my divorce or, whatever it is, I've got to get that out of my closet. So if you're really listening to those deeper dimensions, your own deeper knowing, you get a lot of information. So I'm doing this process, and mostly what I'm doing is I'm trying on the self of the future. Like, who am I in a relationship with someone who actually shows up for me, who actually is available to me, who really commits? I also was standing in where I was in my own development at that point, was really taking on the practice of non-victimization. So I kind of was embracing that Buddhist phrase of there is no one out there, that everyone is a mirror of who I am. So I was trying that on, and I just decided to recognize that I've been trying to find love for about 2 decades now. And I stood in this intention with a group of friends who were all kind of setting intentions together, and I declared an unreasonable future that I was going to be engaged by my 42nd birthday, 8 months away, no prospects for a partner, let alone a great one. But instead of running out to try and find love, I went within to begin to really take ownership at a deeper level of all of the kind of hidden covert blocks and barriers that I had built against it. So in other words, I was turning towards the part of me that weren't really on board with that future, that were somehow out of alignment, out of integrity, and I started to really engage it and bring it up to the surface. So this is my calling in the one journey. Of course, the first thing I look at is how am I unavailable, which on a surface level didn't seem like I was, because I really was trying hard and I really wanted love. But there were parts of me that were not at all available. I mean, just and an example of that is I saw that I had a very either or kind of thinking about it. Inside of patterns of codependence, I tended to give my power away to other people when I was close to them, and I would abandon my own self a lot inside of tending to their feelings and needs, disconnecting from my own. But as we can see now, some 20 years later, I actually had a really big mission that was burning in my soul to touch a lot of lives. And there was a part of me fiercely protective of that mission. So what I dealt with is I had to look at the either or consciousness that I had, Ross, right? Where it's either I get to have love or I get to have mission. And when you make it conscious, I was able to say to myself, wow, I wonder what it would look like to have a relationship that actually makes it even more possible to have my mission come to fruition. Somebody who helped me on that journey. I'd never actually had that thought before until I made it conscious and took responsibility that this was actually being generated from me. So, long story short, reconnected with a man I hadn't seen in 6 years. I thought of him all that time as the one that got away, and we were engaged before my 42nd birthday, married the next year, gave birth to our daughter when I was 43, and then wrote the book from there. And I'd only worked with a handful of people at the time. It's like, okay, I'm going to make this process. What did I just do when I manifest that miracle? And I'm a person who likes to share good things with people. So I thought, okay, let me map this out for my friends. And then of course started to catch, and people were sending people. So I really did a careful job because I wanted to help people in this area because I knew how much suffering there could be. And I think sometimes, Ross, in the spiritual community, we kind of downplay the need for personal love as though it's somehow not as important as the cultivation of kind of a universal compassionate love, really inside of ancient Buddhist traditions. But I will tell you that personal love is a beautiful spiritual path, and that we are all being called deeper into our relationship to each other. We're not called to run off to monasteries anymore to deepen into the characteristics and the qualities of love. So back to your wonderful question, the book became an instant bestseller within a few weeks. It was on the national bestseller list, which was amazing because I'd never written anything before. I didn't really know what I was doing. But one foot in front of the other. And I started having students come to me, and I've had the privilege of teaching tens of thousands of people. And I learned so much. So the core outline of the program and the core concepts were there from the beginning in the book. But I rewrote the book because of how much my students have taught me about the particular ways that we really need to transform in this area, because it's so deep and so primitive. We're going all the way back to the womb. We're going back to the crib. We're going back to, early childhood years where you're forming a self sense as it relates to love, whether you're a person who's worthy of love, whether you're a person who can count on other people, whether you're someone who's wanted in this world, valued in this world, worthy of love, safe to love, right? All of these things are very primal. So the work that has developed over the years is extremely deep, but very clear. And the way that I just felt like I needed to go. I could have written another book, but because people love this book so much, I felt that I had an opportunity to go back and okay, let me infuse this book with everything I now know about this. So I'm cleaning a lot of things up, and I'm really clarifying the process.
Beautiful. One of the themes, and you mentioned it, that runs throughout the book is safety. Can you speak to the importance of feeling safe, first of all, with ourselves and being able to be in charge of our own sense of safety, and then how that applies in our relationships?
That's a beautiful question. I think the need for safety is kind of a universal need that we all share. And yet, if we were raised in environments that had a lack of safety, either because of some event that happened, someone died or someone left, or if it was kind of a prolonged sense of just a kind of developmental trauma where you had a narcissist for a parent, or you had a rageaholic for a parent. So there wasn't that safety. What happened back then is we learned to create pseudo safety. We learned, in other words, what that might look like is you disappear yourself and become kind of invisible in order to not get in the way of the rageaholic. And then your personality kind of forms around that. But it's not really who you are. It's not what your, maybe your soul is coded to be on the stage speaking to thousands, but you've kind of built this life around the strategy of disappearing yourself. Or, gosh, for codependence, which is a very kind of core wounding, what we'll do in codependence is very often develop acute empathy skills. Certainly because there was, and codependence is basically that somebody, one of your primary caregivers was not capable of really being present for you. They were in, out, maybe they were narcissistic. You had to love them in order for the love. If you didn't love them, there was no love happening kind of thing, which is a really unnatural, traumatic experience when we're little. But what I'm interested in, and I know a lot of therapists go back to the beginning, they do a lot of great work back there. But what I'm fascinated by is if you stand for a future that's unlike anything you've ever had before, and you really begin to feel into the self that you are in that future, what's the highest and the best for me? Let's imagine that a miracle, a lot of times we're thinking from our circumstances. I like to think from the sky is the limit. What do I truly desire if I could have anything? And to start, let yourself play with the energies of life. And you're going to find that the self sense of that person is a person who is connected to their feelings and needs, who is able to negotiate for those needs, a person who is able to give without giving themselves away. Right. So the core of codependence is that you're giving to get in some way. You're trying to get safety. So one of the things that we do really, I think pretty elegantly and simple in calling in the one is start to point out, we kind of go back to that core of the consciousness that got developed. And you could do this through this book. I know it's amazing to hear, but the book has really just been it's so like, I hope you read the book, so it's not me saying it. You would have to say it because I don't want to like tout.
Well, it's very in depth, and I didn't have time to do the whole program, but I'm planning on actually doing, and just for our audience to know, it's a 7-week course with a lesson each day, and each lesson has a practice at the end that you use throughout the day. You do a practice and then you apply it throughout your day. Yeah, it's profound, absolutely.
Right. So for example, if we take codependence, instead of analyzing it with our brains and going back like who did what, when, where, how often did it happen, which I think at some point we get kind of tired of telling that story. And I think that the fatigue really has to do with we don't want to keep reinforcing the self that we developed in response to that trauma. Wherever we're centered at the level of identity is where we're generating our lives from. So if you start from the future that you're a person who has happy, healthy love and you're together with someone, you're starting, you're initiating a developmental process like who would I need to be being in order for that to happen? How will I need to grow in that direction so that I outgrow codependence? So let me give everyone an exercise that we do. So one of the things you want to do is to think about the pattern that you're kind of plagued with. And patterns are sometimes a little challenging to see. And I like to keep patterns kind of clean, like what actually happens. Because sometimes I say, what's a pattern? And people say, well, men don't like me or women don't like me. But that's the interpretation of the pattern. What actually happens is that they don't choose you. You date for a while and then they kind of leave and choose someone else. That's what happens. Or nobody ever asks me out. So kind of the absence of a pattern is the pattern because nothing's going on for long periods of time. Or I get into a relationship with people who are all about themselves and I end up, giving, and I'm depleted. And then I end up leaving because I can't take it anymore. And I have to find myself again. So there's some kind of pattern. And usually, like I said, mine was unavailability. Usually if you really look for it, you can start to see it. So then what I tell people to do is to close their eyes and think about the pattern and imagine that it's happening right now. It just happened again. Somebody just chose someone else, or you're home alone on a Saturday night, everybody else, or the only single person at the dinner table, and just what does that feel like? Where do you feel the pain of that in your body? And usually it's somewhere in the heart. It feels like a heaviness on your heart, or maybe an upset in your solar plexus. I saw that you just did it. Did you find where that was?
For me, it's in the pit of my stomach.
Right. Right. Very well named. So if you stay with your eyes closed, you can say to that part of you, what's the I am? This is the emotional center of the pattern. What's the I am or I'm not? There's a story, there's a narrative that's there. Do you know what that is, Russ?
Yeah, it's a sense of, I think it's worthiness and belonging. It's something around that.
Like I don't belong. I'm
Yeah,
I'm
not.
unworthy.
Yeah, I'm not really wanted. Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah.
So keep your eyes closed for a second. Just send love to that part of you and ask that part of you, how old are you, sweetheart? See if you come up with an age. It's just intuitive.
Sorry, can you repeat that, Katherine?
How old are you? How old are you? Yeah.
Oh, this is, yeah, as old as me, 36 years old.
Yeah, he's super, super little. Maybe an infant in a crib or even a forming fetus, right? Okay, just send so much love to him. Okay. So that's what we call your false love identity. And what happens is that usually we're dating for a while and we're in our competent adult selves. You can open your eyes unless you want to spend more time with him.
I'll save that for later.
Yeah. But where you want to go. So what happens is we're dating. Once you start to feel yourself form a certain emotional dependency, that's what triggers our fear that I'm not safe here. Or what triggers the insecurity. It triggers the kind of the narrative, that younger self in the body. And I remember when I was dating before I created this work, I remember being in relationships, but feeling like I was a 12-year-old, trying to pretend to be a grown-up because I knew that I didn't want to be needy, and I thought I knew it was embarrassing, but inside I really felt that way. So that's an indication of what I'm talking about. That's the false love identity. It's the self sense that was born from your original trauma. So what we do in Calling in the One is we have you now, and anyone who's listening can just do this. I'm getting right to the heart of Calling in the One. There's different obstacles to love, but this is the identity, the transformation of your love identity that we really go deeply with in week 3 of the course. So you as a 36-year-old man, what's the best thing about you now and who you've
Best
grown
thing.
yourself to be? Yeah.
I think the balance that I've found in strength and sensitivity.
Oh, that actually really touches me. Thank you. Yeah, that's beautiful. So what you want to do is really connect with that part of you, this man who is really committed. It's not just that you found the balance, it's that you're a man who's so committed to finding the balance. That you're a man who's committed to being conscious in that way. That you're a man who really cares about developing yourself and, standing in authentic power. Okay? Something to be really proud of. If I was your mom, I'd be really, really proud of you. So
Very proud.
she is proud.
She's very proud.
I bet she is. I bet she is.
Thanks, Mom.
Yeah. So this man, okay, everyone, you can see Ross is in his power and his strength and his goodness. So I would have you connect in, close your eyes again, breathe that self down into your hips, down through your legs, even out the bottoms of your feet, down into the earth and out to the edges of the room. And from here, Ross, you're going to turn towards that little boy in your belly. And you're going to say, oh, sweetheart, I want you with all my heart. You are worthy of love. You need do nothing to prove it. And you belong to me. You belong to me. Right? So you start to wake that part of you up. And then we have you develop what we call love power statements. I came here to love and be loved. It is my destiny. I am worthy to receive love. I need do nothing to earn it. But it's connected. It's not just a kind of a disembodied, unrelated affirmation. I love affirmations. I really love affirmations. God bless Louise. But power statements are connected to the old story. And you need to mentor that part of you in your body so that you are able to, when he comes up in a dating situation, you can hold him. You can get back in your strength. It's almost like if the 2-year-old was driving the car, you put him back in the back seat and you buckle him up safely. Because it's the adult man that keeps relationships safe. If it's up to the 2-year-old to try and create safety, the 2-year-old can only create safety by giving power away, by disappearing himself, by dominating other people, like all these kind of 2-year-old ways of trying to create safety. They don't tend to go well. They actually create a lack of safety in our relationships.
Yes.
So I just wanted to give people a taste of it and get it out of theory,
Thank you for that, Catherine. And everybody, you're getting, like she said, you're getting a taste of the core of this work, which is really beautiful. I wanted to give a quote that really stood out to me from lesson 2, which is the chapter's titled "Looking Through Laura's Eyes." And the quote, if I can share it, it says, "For though it seems that we Westerners place a high value on love, in reality, I'm not so sure. In spite of our plethora of love songs, romantic comedies, and romance novels, we're too often a what's in it for me society. I would even suggest that our preoccupation with romantic love may actually be a symptom of a certain inner poverty that we've come to call normal, a pervasive and distressing shortage of connection and care that most of us assume is a personal pathology." Can you speak to this? And like a big part of the book is not just learning how to love ourselves and a partner, but expressing love in all of its forms and being connected and being kind and compassionate and caring in our everyday lives. Can you speak
Yeah.
to this point?
Yeah, the first two lessons in the book are really about getting aligned with this awareness. Like if you really want a great love in your life, where you want to place all of your attention is on growing your capacity to love and be loved, and really learning how to live with a more open heart. Because the most beautiful part about, you know, about really the most beautiful part of life is living with an open heart and caring about each other and learning to grow our capacity to love and be loved. That's not something that is it's not something that we just kind of wake up knowing. You know, we love is something that we actually have to cultivate and grow. So, what are examples about that? Well, you know, learning how to have good boundaries with people would be one really important capacity to not skip over, because what keeps love healthy and safe over time is really good boundaries. Learning how to tolerate disappointing someone in order to say no, to stay true to yourself. And one of the hallmarks of healthy love is the ability to say no, and to not fear a loss of love, and vice versa, you to your partner. But the first 2 days of the course are really about just really being willing to learn the ways of love, to open your heart, to start caring more deeply, and to awaken the field of relatedness. And I think that some of us, I think, first of all, the first thing you said was that I don't belong, which is really common right now in Western culture in particular, this feeling of alienation. And one of the things that I learned about the I don't belong is that we are the ones to generate belonging, that we're the source of belonging. So to start to, you know, open up and generate a certain altruistic spirit towards other people. I mean, study after study show that the happiest people are people who are altruistic, not who have the most money, not who are holding all the power in the room. It's the people who have learned and cultivated the capacity to care about others as well as themselves, to not do it at the expense of themselves, but to live with a more open heart.
Yeah. I just want to let the audience know that Katherine is going to be getting to some of your questions in the last 15 minutes of our session. So please feel free to send in your questions in the Q&A tab, and we'll be reading them out to her. Sexuality. Lesson 34 is on healing your sexuality. And I'll share another short quote from that section and ask you to comment on it.
Okay.
It says, most of us harbor at least a small amount of shame for past sexual indiscretions, choices that we wish we'd made differently. Our transgressions stay with us somehow, soiling some secret part of our soul, as though something precious and irretrievable has been lost or worse, stolen from us. We all need to forgive ourselves for some lack of judgment we displayed at one time or another. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, I'm all about really going, of kind of turning towards the places where we're still holding on to shame, where we're still not loving ourselves or feeling. I mean, the thing about shame is that it causes us to try and hide ourselves. We want to hide, or we want to present a certain way. There's parts of us that we don't want others to see. So it's important that we start to turn towards all of these kind of places within us that we're still holding on to old hurts, and to be able to let them go, to actually release them. So I think in this particular chapter, I actually kind of lead people through a ritual that you can do where you're just, you're moving energy of pain, of embarrassment, of shame, of hurt out of your body. And you're reclaiming your own sexual sovereignty. You're kind of reclaiming a place where your sexuality belongs to you. You are the one who has agency over your own sexuality. You get to choose, and so that you can move into, calling in the one's a very spiritual program, but a lot of times our spiritual work is from the heart up. So, we have to get our bodies into this one because this is a sexual relationship for most of us. Although I always, say that some people are asexual, and I think that asexual people can find love too. So I think whatever our sexual style, there is as our grandmothers used to say, there's a lid for every pot.
Nice. Um, Lesson 38. This is a really key thing, owning yourself as cause.
Oh,
And
yeah.
one thing I found so interesting about that was you mentioned the study from Stanford University done by Dr. David Burns.
Hmm.
And they found the only difference between successful, happy relationships and unsuccessful relationships was the blame and shame game.
Hmm.
Can you tell us more about that?
Oh, we're so victimized. I mean, gosh, I don't know. Maybe it's better in Canada, but you're all watching with horror the victimization and blame that's going on in America, particularly in the political arena. But I think it's reflective of our general consciousness. And here's the thing about blaming other people. Nothing changes when you blame. When you blame yourself, you blame another. Blame is different than responsibility. And one of the reasons we have a hard time self-reflecting on ourselves as the source of our experience is that we will collapse into blame and shame very easily. So we're talking about being at cause. We're really talking about being able to have a more objective, healthy relationship with yourself. And we might even define mental health as the ability to reflect and take responsibility for when you've made mistakes, when you've had ill motives, when you've done something selfish, and to fess up and apologize and make amends. Notice I didn't say apologize and explain why you did what you did. I said apologize and make it right. You take right action. But I think it begins to wake us up to how much power we're holding to create our lives when we're willing to get out of the victim position. So, yeah, I mean, blame and shame it's very easy to fall into that. Who's right, who's wrong. What you start to recognize when you really get into relationship and kind of the longevity of relationship inside of a commitment to have a really vital, happy love that lasts over time. It's not just the falling in love, it's the creation of love every day. That's actually the fun part. But if you get into, no, 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 it was like this, and you did that, and you did this, it's not going to go anywhere. As it's actually going to go into, creating more alienation and hurt. And the truth is that, reality is very subjective. It's kind of shocking how different our stories will be. This is why you get people saying, "What are you, crazy? It didn't happen like this. It happened like this." That's kind of human beings. So, so there's ways, that we have to develop ourselves to be capable of not just being in reaction to that when our partner does something crazy or says something crazy, or even, blames us for something, to not go right back into reactivity, but to be able to kind of sidestep that and go deeper and stay in, curiosity and interest in the other person's perspective, even though you completely disagree with it, because you're learning about that person. You're deepening your understanding of each other. So we have to get out of the mindset that I'm in this relationship to get my needs met. We have to come in with a lot to give. Doesn't mean that we're self-abandoning, because there's mutuality. So here's the wonderful thing. This is why we're so confused. Let me just clean this up, why we're so confused about relationship. So we're at this amazing time in the evolution of consciousness in the world. And relationships are moving really quickly. They're evolving just as quickly as anything else. If you think about how fast technology is evolving, that's how fast relationships are evolving. So one of the things that we are up against is that when we look in our past, we look at maybe our parents or our grandparents, and they had most people had almost a role-based. I mean, you're young enough so that you might have, you might have a mother who actually had a more soul-based relationship. I don't know. So some of you, me, no shot, because I'm 64. So my role models, they were all role-based, back in the 60s, back in the 50s. And but since then, what has emerged is a partnership of equals, where both people are holding power. And mutuality is what we're looking to create. So guess what? It requires a lot more skills than it ever required of our grandparents when they were forming partnerships. So our expectations are higher. The hunger in our hearts are higher. What we're longing for to really be met, to really be seen. I'm sorry, that's my crazy cat. I'm not torturing a child in the back room.
The cat is calling out for the one.
I call her my opera singer cat. So, and I put her in the closet for this, but my partner took her out of the closet. So, so we are at this amazing time where what life is wanting to begin to cultivate through us is this ability to stand in mutual partnership with each other, to really begin to see each other clearly, to learn how to honor each other, to learn how to be interdependent in a healthy, beautiful way. And so that is forcing us to develop internal skills, the ability to self-soothe when I'm upset as opposed to react, the ability to know what I'm assuming about the other person that may or may not be true, that I have to probably reality check and ask them, are you mad at me right now? Because it seems like you are. Or am I just projecting that out of my old, insecurities? So there's a lot of internal development. And then there's stuff that we're learning about how to be together. And it's alive and dynamic. So one of the things that I love about Calling in the One, and why I never get tired of doing this work, is because we're all learning together, and it is developmental. And it's not just about saying, I want a relationship, because none of us just want a relationship. We want a great relationship. We want to really be with the right person. And that means that we need to also be the right person, because every relationship is a spectrum of possibilities. It's not just about meeting that one person. Some of us have felt like we met the right person and then it got all screwed up because our history's gotten away. We weren't ready. So we want to clear that. We want to clear that. If you say, I want to be engaged next year, by next year, I want to be a father, I want to be a mother, by the time I'm 40, then you want to start cultivating the qualities and the characteristics of parenthood now, of being a partner now, of being an amazing partner, and just actively learning your skills and cultivating a vision of what it looks like. Some of us have never had this before. Some of us were not raised in homes that modeled it, but luckily there's wonderful books about love. And there's wonderful books that, I'm reading one tonight. This is my dear friend, my new friend, Polly Young Eisendrath. You guys should probably have her. She wrote a beautiful book called The Present Heart.
Mm,
Polly is an amazing teacher of relationships. She has a wonderful book called Love Between Equals. She's a psychotherapist, and she was married to her soulmate. And then after, I don't know, maybe 2 decades, he got early onset Alzheimer's. And the whole book is about her journey with that. Such heart, such goodness. And her capacity to love is off the hook. So she's going to tell you all about, we need these stories. What does it look like to have true love and to be capable of true love? So for a lot of us, rather than just keep analyzing the past, you want to get really curious, like, what do I need to grow in order to create a future that's unlike anything I've ever known before? Because we have the power to do that.
mhm. Thank you. We've got some nice questions coming in here from the live audience. If we can address a few of those, that all right with you?
Yeah.
Okay. Keep them rolling in, folks. This one's from Jennifer, and she says, I have the same issue as you had, it seems. I keep choosing emotionally unavailable men who make me feel safe physically, but not emotionally, and end up treating me badly. I've had one beautiful relationship in my 20s that was normal and not this way, and not this way. And after that one, they have all cheated and been terrible.
Oh,
Any other tips to help me change this pattern? I know you went into this already, but can you talk a bit more about your experience?
I think this, Jennifer, you're asking a great question because you're saying, how can I be done with this pattern? You just notice everyone. Jennifer didn't say, why is this happening? Okay, there's a minute in our lives to ask, why is this happening? But the most important question is, how can I make it happen differently? Who would I need to be? What needs to change in me? So that's a beautiful question. The process that I was just kind of, dipping our toe in the water with Ross. And first of all, can I just say thank you, Ross, for being willing to do that? That was really beautiful.
Well, it's my pleasure. I feel lucky to get a very quick private session with you, Catherine.
So where the course goes after this, because we do a piece of this a day, is to start to see how are you the source of the patterns that you're struggling with, like, and not psychologically necessarily. Because if I say, how am I the source? Oh, because my mom did this, or my dad did this, or my older brother did that. And that's probably valid. It might be, what set you up for that. But as adults, how is it that that story is staying in place, keeps showing up again? We're not responsible at all for what happened to us as children, but we are responsible for what happened to us last month. What are the choices you're making? What are the actions you're taking or not taking? So if you have emotionally unavailable men who are not emotionally present for you and whose hearts are, closed, and they're pretty disinterested in what you would actually need in order to feel well, to really be emotionally well. I think the first place to start is to look at well, first of all, it's to say, do that process we did with Ross. Find out where that is in your body, what the I am is, how old that self is, connect with your adult self, mentor that younger you, wake yourself up out of that trance. But then you want to say to yourself, okay, what are the habitual ways that I show up in life that are actually making it so that somehow these men find a home in me? Because, by the way, there's always going to be emotionally unavailable people around. But why they're finding their way into your bed, that's the problem. So you have to say, what are they mirroring in my relationship with me? First of all, do I take time to connect with my own emotions? Am I aware of my own needs? Do I honor my own needs? Do I prioritize my own needs? Do I tend to my own feelings? Do I express my feelings and needs with others clearly? Do I negotiate for my needs before even getting into bed with somebody? How am I setting up the terms of this relationship? Am I self-abandoning my needs to attend only to their needs? Because somehow in the relationship, you're either choosing men who are babies, and it's all about them, and they're just takers, or maybe there's a way you're even kind of training them in that direction because you're sourcing your value from being such a great giver. So that's what we're starting to unpack. Now, when you see one of those things, let me focus on one of those things. Yeah, I self-abandon all the time. I turn away from my feelings and needs. That's one way of being Jennifer. And if you go back to what's your love power center, then I am a woman who is worthy of love. I am a woman who is worthy of love, worthy of having her feelings and needs cherished. You start cherishing yourself, and then how would that woman start to show up? Well, first of all, I would make time to connect with my feelings and my needs. And I would make time to prioritize my needs above the needs of other people. And then I would let people know what my feelings and needs were, and that the first sign that they were not interested in taking care of my feelings and needs, even if they were super exciting, super sexy, I'd say, "Oh, I wish I could eat that chocolate cake right now, but not good for me. I'm going to take a pass." Right? So, and you really try on, like, what is it for somebody to really show up for me? Somebody I admire, I respect, cherishes me. You have to stretch yourself into that, right? But I'm interested in graduating you from that pattern forever. So I hope that gives you something to work with. Thanks, Jennifer.
Thank you, Katherine. There's a question from Ryan. Ryan says, I loved what you said about our spiritual healing is from the heart chakra up, and love work is to get into the body and heal things. What are some of your favorite ways to get into your body and feel things?
Oh, great. I do a lot of breathing into my hips. I think, and this is a really critical part of the work that we're doing here, because if you notice, like where Ross so generously went in front of us, he went right down to his solar plexus. Usually the old false narratives, the insecure self, the wounded self, the I am alone self, the I am not wanted, I am not loved self, is lower than our hearts. It's usually in the solar plexus. It might be sitting on the heart. I like to work with the lowest part of the body because I believe that wherever you are centered energetically, the lowest part in your body is the part of you that's in charge of how life is being generated. So this is why I think around these particular ancient woundings, you're going to, I'm not going to say that affirmations are not as effective because, we all, again, love affirmations, but they're not going to be able to really get to the center of it. You're still going to be kind of talking on top of it. So I like to go all the way down into my hips. What's really true about that? Right? It has a certain to it. It's in my thighs. I am a woman who is worthy of love. Now I can say that, and there is a part of me that knows it's true. There's a part of you, Jennifer, that knows it's true. Ryan, whatever that is for you, you want to speak it from that part of your body, because when the 2-year-old, when the infant is held with that kind of container, where you're really in your power, that part of you will finally melt and say, oh, thank God somebody finally showed up and told me the truth. I don't have to carry this. I don't have to be in charge with this story anymore. So I'm really all about, deep breath. And sometimes I have people, when you find your power statement, kind of stamp your feet, get in your feet. And as you notice, we ran the energy down into the earth, out to the edges of the room, really creating a container to be able to deconstruct those beliefs at the core. Now, here's the thing about beliefs. I just want to mention to everybody this other piece of it. Beliefs are relational. They're not just something you feel. And you have to understand that in order to graduate fully from your beliefs, you really must show up in these new ways of relating that are kind of foreign to you, asking for what you really want and need. Might be like, whoa, how do I do that? For some of you, it's going to just be refraining from giving, refraining from rescuing. Doing nothing is a big deal. Somebody puts their foot in the mouth and you just let them handle that. And you do nothing. That moment is like, whoa. Right. So it's these things, these new ways of relating are very, very subtle. But what happens when you have the clarity on which ones to do is that you start to have a different experience between yourself and other people. And it's inside that experience where your true love identity is being mirrored back to you. That's when it begins to really evolve forward. So anyway, I got a little off your question, Ryan, but I think you got the point. And I think it's all kind of holistic. So I want to give you as much as I can.
Yeah.
We have 4 minutes left.
I think we've got time for one more question. This one's from Stephen, who says, being single and almost 60, how does one keep an optimistic outlook on romance for the future, especially when the present moment seems at times futile? And even with greater cultivation of self-care and love, I find myself feeling at times very alone, which furthers my feelings of undeserving and singled out.
So beautifully said, Stephen. What courage to articulate that. Thank you so much. I think it's really important what Stephen's talking about. He's talking about what he's saying is I recognize you have to be in a state of possibility to find your way to that future. Because I'm talking about being generative of that future, co-creating that future with life. The foundation of that is to be in a place of possibility. So what opens up possibility when you've had a lifetime of struggles? And here you are alone again. That's the default. If you say I'm very alone, it's probably the false identity. You've probably struggled and suffered with that experience for many, many years. It's kind of like the default, Remember that Gilbert O'Sullivan song, Alone Again Naturally? Like one song of the year, that the year it came out. It's actually a great song, but it goes right to the heart of I'm all alone again. So you want to start to recognize, Stephen, that there's several components to keeping possibility alive. Number one is even if only like 3% of you is aligned with what I'm saying, that has the courage to create some kind of crazy, unreasonable intention for the future, you want to turn your attention to that 3% and empower that 3%. You don't have to solve all of the lack of belief. You want to grow the part of you that does have hope. Then you want to put yourself into communities of people. If one of the things that I put into the book was instructions for how to do this with others. So at the back of every chapter, in the beginning, there's how to do the book with others, how to do the course with others. And at the back of every chapter, it's you get together. These are the questions you ask. So you're holding the high watch with and for each other, because we get disappointed. And when disappointment's the biggest trigger for an old belief system. So it's hard for us to do it alone, really hard. The other thing is, and I teach classes right and left. I'm always doing something. Kathleen is asking, you just go to my website and find out about that. Thank you. But for this reason, because I think we all need to be together in order to do the heavy lifting of evolving beyond these core beliefs. That's why we felt so victimized by our own consciousness. It's not easy, but if you're in the field where people are doing this together, it's much easier. The real key is non-victimization. And that means if I can give up blaming my circumstances, blaming other people, blaming myself, blaming my parents, and actually look and identify, who am I being that this is happening over and over? How am I generating my own aloneness? From the consciousness of I am alone, what choices do I make? What actions do I take that actually perpetuate that story? So once you begin to understand yourself as the source of your experience, what opens up is the possibility of choice. When you see it specifically, how do I generate my own aloneness? I'm self-sufficient to the extreme. I turn away from conflict because I'm afraid that others will leave me if I'm disagreeing with them. But in turning away from conflict, I never really root the relationship down. I never truly bond it or make it real. Or I self-abandon so much that I feel like I'm not even in the relationship. It's just like the shell of the relationship. So you have to start to see all the subtle ways that we are the source of our own experience, and that will awaken a sense of hope, because we can suddenly see, oh, it's not who I am that I'm destined to be alone. It's that I don't engage conflict well. Wow, let me go learn how to do that. Let me start to have a spiritual practice of, engaging conflict, moving towards someone, not cutting someone out of my heart because they disappointed me, but picking up the phone and saying, I want to talk about this because you matter to me. Right? So once you see yourself as source, that's what opens up the possibility of development. So thank you, Stephen, for that tender question.
Yes, thank you to everybody for submitting your questions to Katherine. And as always, a big thanks to everybody who's here live, and to all the viewers and listeners, and to our amazing producer, Jacob, who does so much work behind the scenes to bring all the amazing events and interviews for Banyan Books. Thanks a lot, Jacob Steele. And Katherine, it was really amazing to have you here today. Thank you for sharing your beautiful heart with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm just so delighted to meet you. I think you guys are doing such beautiful work. And I'm really, really grateful to be part of your tribe now.